Antarctica, the southernmost continent and the most remote of them all. With a territory that is double the size of Australia, this place is one of the most mysterious on Earth. Usually you only go here if you're doing important research, or if you really love the cold. But honestly, there's not a whole lot going on there. Or at least that's what we've been told. But is it possible that a continent this big can be so boring? I don't think so, personally. There have been tons of crazy stories of crazy things happening in this place, and that's why today I'll be showing you 10 of the scariest things found in Antarctica. It makes sense that a place so remote is full of strange and creepy phenomena. At the end of this video, you'll realize that this place is far from boring or uneventful, and perhaps you'll want to check it out someday. Number 10. Jade-Green icebergs. We start with something pretty eerie, something that we don't see too often. Usually icebergs are white or blue, but Antarctica also has jade-green icebergs. These emerald-colored chunks of ice remind me of the Wizard of Oz and other fantastical places that only exist in fairy tales where places are jade-green and magical things happen in them. A group of explorers took a sample of these icebergs in 1988, and they found that the iceberg is not made out of glacier ice, but instead it's made out of marine ice. This type of iceberg gets its unique color from iron oxide in seawater that blends with the crystalline blue color of the ice. Iron is an important nutrient for the marine phytoplankton, so the existence of these green icebergs with high concentrations of iron indicates that they're more than just an exotic part of nature. They're actually pretty important for the environment. Number 9. Eerie sounds. Antarctica is relatively quiet compared to the other parts of the world. When you're there, you're likely to hear penguins, seals, albatross, and other animals that can survive in the cold. Sometimes you'll also hear inflatable boats and ships as they move through frozen waters. But sometimes, if you listen even closer, you will also hear the ice. And I'm not talking about the sound of an avalanche or the sounds of ice breaking into pieces. I'm talking about the eerie sounds that researchers found when they were studying the ice in the area. They say it sounds like the soundtrack of a sci-fi movie. That is the result of wind and outer snow coming together and creating some pretty creepy music for your journey. Although it might be hard to believe, these sounds actually have a purpose. If you learn to monitor the songs of the ice, you can predict how stable it is and how likely it is to collapse. In other words, the ice can speak to you if you listen closely. Number 8. Bloodfalls. Waterfalls are beautiful, except when it looks like they're pouring down streams of blood. In 1911, a group of scientists found a waterfall with deep red water coming out from it. They called it the Blood Falls due to its color, and they believed the red hue was caused by red algae. However, years later they came to realize that the color came from oxidized iron in the seawater. It really doesn't sound that scary when you look at the science behind it, but there's actually something intriguing about these red waterfalls. Some researchers found microbes that can survive extreme conditions. You gotta keep in mind that one of the reasons why Antarctica doesn't have a lot of living beings like other places is because the continent is so cold that not many can survive the low temperatures. However, the microbes in these red waters can survive in these conditions, and they even resemble what life used to be like at the beginning of times, when there was not enough oxygen on Earth for the survival of complex beings like you and me. Number 7. A UFO. We hear about UFO sightings in different parts of the world, but if there's one place where you're likely to see one is in Antarctica. For many years, there have been all sorts of conspiracies that claim the existence of UFOs hovering above this remote continent. One of the most recent claims comes from a group of alien hunters, who say that they saw UFOs in the region back in 2018. They even have pictures to support their claims. Their photo went viral as it shows what appears to be a spaceship that landed in a remote part of the continent while leaving a trail behind it. Experts disagree and claim it is the result of an avalanche, but the group says that the trail is way too perfect to have been caused by nature. If the conspiracies are true, then we have some visitors on our planet, and this picture would be a proof of their landing. Number 6. Lost continents and creepy earthquakes. How many continents can you name? Do you know all of them? Well, here's an interesting fact for you. There might be more continents than the ones you know so far. Or actually, there were more continents than the ones we know of today. The proof of that has been found under Antarctica's ice. Data gathered between 2009 and 2013 shows that the eastern part of this cold continent is made out of huge blocks of Earth's crust that are also known as cratons. Those cratons are the leftovers of those ancient continents that don't exist anymore. But who lived there, and what happened to these places? The findings indicate that Antarctica was part of a supercontinent called Gondwana, which began to break up during the Jurassic period. But that's not everything about East Antarctica. Researchers familiar with Antarctica never thought that earthquakes were possible in this part of the planet. They were convinced that the weight of the ice pinned against the layers of the Earth made it impossible for the ground to shake. However, on June 4th of 2018, a new study showed that there are quite a lot of earthquakes happening in this region. In fact, they're as regular as in many other parts of the world. It's just that they need different kinds of tools to measure the ones happening in here. In 2009, they recorded about 27 earthquakes, and they range from magnitudes of 2.1 to 3.9. Apparently, there's a lot of activity happening under the ice of East Antarctica, even if it's not evident at first sight. Number 5. Heat and warm caves. You might think Antarctica is simply a cold place, but there are actually some warm areas that you can easily explore without worrying about freezing to death. Apparently, this heat is formed by a huge crack in the crust under the ice, which releases a lot of hydrothermal energy directly from the center of the Earth. This energy is the reason behind the crazy amounts of melted water under the ice sheet in East Antarctica. But that's not all. There are also some caves under the glaciers that are likely to support life. They formed from the steam of an active volcano near Mount Erebus. After scientists took samples of the soil in these caves, they found out DNA of small animals and algae. These scientists say that you could walk into these caves while wearing just a t-shirt and you'll be fine. I never thought this would be possible in a cold place like Antarctica, but obviously these caves can definitely support life. Algae and small animals sound fine, but I really hope there aren't larger creatures living down there as well. Number 4. A mysterious lake. It's a bit hard to find things in a place that is fully covered in ice. It's pretty much like walking in the desert, except that it's cold and white instead of hot and sandy. But under these layers of ice, there is a very mysterious lake. It covers an area of about 140 square kilometers. It's beneath the West Antarctic ice sheet, and the dark waters of this lake might be home to some higher forms of life. Scientists say that life in this lake can be used to understand life on the planets like Mars, where a similar lake was spotted by a European spacecraft. Finding life in these buried bodies of water is also a big deal for us here on Earth. This is because they can help us understand what life was like 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. Number 3. The huge anomaly. There is a frozen wasteland in an area called Wilkesland, and it was in this remote and creepy part of the continent that scientists found an anomaly, a huge object that could offer some answers to our questions about the history of our planet. They say that this massive object could be an asteroid that is more than twice the size of the one that erased the dinosaurs from Earth. If this is true, then this asteroid is probably the one that erased 96% of sea creatures and 70% of land animals during the Great Dying, which was a massive extinction event that happened more than 250 million years ago. But don't forget about the UFO hunters. They also put their eyes on this object, and they say that this huge object is a UFO base while other people believe it's a gate to the underworld. Now it's time for the day's best pick. A lot of the things we've seen so far gives us the idea that there are strange forms of life in the remote continent, and the picture I chose for the day gives you an idea of what it might look like. Let's check it out with number 2. Bizarre creature. A group of scientists were on an expedition when they found a strange creature at 3,500 meters below the ice. They say the creature looked like a cross of a slug and a hippopotamus. When the scientists started their journey, they found themselves in a place that resembled the barren surface of Mars. But after throwing their nets into the frozen sea, they finally got their hands on the strange creature, which they claimed they hadn't seen before. It's obviously hard to explore this part of the planet, and even harder to explore life at 3,500 meters below the ice. That depth is almost as high as the Swiss Alps. It sounds like a lot of work, but you can see that scientists' thirst for new things never ends. They're always down to explore new places and find new things. Before we move on, do me a favor. My analytics show that only about 15% of you watching are actually subscribed. Come on guys, what's up with that? Can you guys please hit the subscribe button? You guys watch my videos every day anyway, so you might as well subscribe and keep up to date with every video we put out. Number 1. Penguin mummies. The thing at the top of my list is very creepy and something I never thought I'd actually have to say, but it's still pretty interesting. It's a group of mummified penguins, and they have nothing to do with any illness that swept through their homes or some deadly massacre in the past. Studies have shown that they died due to heavy snow and rains from hundreds of years ago, but they're mummified because of the dry and cold setting of Antarctica. When you see these penguins, you'll notice that they're well preserved. It's what happens when you put things in ice. Climate change played a role in the creation of these mummies, and further studies can help scientists predict what the future holds for the penguins that are alive today. Obviously, we need to do our part to prevent the damage that global warming brings. Otherwise, we might end up with more creepy mummies like the ones we see here. And that's all I have for today. Antarctica is indeed mysterious and full of strange, creepy things, but it's a place that I'd like to see someday. What about you? Would you dare go to this continent one day? Or maybe you already have been. How was it? Let us know in the comments section down below. With all that said, that's our video for today, and I'll see you all next time. Later, everybody.